I welcome everybody to Beth Lida's Lag BaOmer Shir. Now, Lag BaOmer is actually very special to me, very special to the shul. Lag BaOmer campfire. We had a kumsitz and a fire. Was the first thing I ever did in my quasi-official capacity for the shul, and it was a really wonderful way that we started our relationship together. We had a really special night with all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork. A whole range of people, diverse group of people came, and it was a really joyous and communal and inclusive time. And it really kicked off, I think, the energy for what we try to create here, which is substantive programming, which really welcomes everybody from where everybody is. And while we can't be together in person, whether you might be visiting a parental abode of some kind or because of legal restrictions, we can still bring the party. We can still bring the joy. We can still bring the excitement. So very much do whatever fun stuff you want in your respective videos, which are private. They're only for you to see. Puppets galore, fun hats, fun beverages, goofy things, whatever brings you joy, you should do. And we'll be learning Torah in the midst of it. If we want to bring a Simchas Torah-dic energy to it, feel free to try to distract me during this class, and we'll see if you succeed. There's a practice in Simchas Torah that not everybody observes because maybe it's disrespecting prayer, but whatever, that the Musaf leader, while davening, there's a tradition to try to distract them so that they stumble over their words, they lose their place. I remember last time we met inside for Simchas Torah, I got just blasted with a super soaker by one of the board members of the shul and his kids. So I was like, I knew, Beth Lida, it's the place I want to be. That was great. So feel free to try to distract me with your goofy screens or whatever. But we're going to continue pressing on and learning some Torah. Tonight's class is all about the history and the nature of Lag BaOmer. Namely, I'm going to try to articulate what I'm going to call a grand unified theory of Lag BaOmer. There are a lot of different disparate elements that make this holiday something special, and it is not clear to many people how they all fit together. I will just say them quickly. I'm just going to read them off, all the things that took place on Lag BaOmer. 1. The day that the students of Rabbi Akiba stopped dying. 2. Commemorating the rabbis' escape from persecution and squirreling themselves away in the forest to learn Torah, but also shoot bows and arrows to trick the Greeks. 3. The death of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. 4. The day the Zohar was written. 5. The day Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai got out of the cave with his son, Rabbi Elazar. I think the 33rd day of the Omer. Hod Shebehod. What do all these things have to do with each other? It is not clear. It is not clear, but we're going to try to work out, what I think is a defensible theory of what Lag BaOmer is trying to get us to do. As many things in Jewish law, I try to see them in a functional way in terms of what they're trying to do to us. So what is Lag BaOmer trying to do to us? How's it trying to transform us in some way? What kind of change is it trying to make in our lives? And also, I think we're going to see especially how Lag BaOmer has some special significance, I hope, for this specific moment that we're in, at a certain inflection point, a year that has kept us so far apart from each other, but as things are starting to turn, even in Ontario, that things are starting to turn, we see actually ways for us to reunite, ways to come back together. So, the name of this class, accordingly, is... I lost the screen. Where'd it go? There it is. The name of the class is Lag BaOmer Reunion. So we're going to focus on the ways that we come back together. I think really, in a way, Lag BaOmer is about the moment that we're able to find each other again. So we'll see if we can pull it off. Okay, so we'll start with this famous story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Elazar. So they run away. Why do they run away? Because they're running away from the Caesar. They're running away from the emperor. They're worried about anti-Jewish persecution. Learning Torah is not allowed anymore, right? It's forbidden, and because of that, they had to go hide themselves away. Now that gets later translated into this notion of going and hiding yourself. Every rabbi went and hid themselves in caves, and then they would play bow and arrow to try to pretend to the Greeks that they were just practicing for the Olympics. But really, we see here, we have like a kernel of this story. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, famed, intense, extreme rabbi, and his son, Rabbi Elazar, who takes after his father in many ways, they run away. They go and hide in a cave. And you might think to yourself, they're in a cave. How are they going to survive? There's not much going on in the cave. They hid in the cave for 7 years. That's a long time. A long time. So how do they eat? The Talmud says a miracle occurred, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as a spring of water. So they have food, they have water. Thank God. And then they would remove their clothes, and they would actually bury themselves in the ground until it was just like, the thing you do where it's like just your head above ground. And they would learn Torah all day. And then when they would have to daven, they would get out of the ground and they would put their clothes on again so that they would be modest, and they would pray. And then afterwards, they would take their clothes off again. And the reason it provides is so their clothes don't get worn through. Makes sense. They actually it's an incredible thing. They used the ground as their clothes and as their insulation. They insulated themselves in the earth. And it was just their heads poking out like little turnips. And they were just turnips of Torah. Astounding story. All right, so they were in caves 12 years. I thought it was 7. All right, they cave for 12 years. 12 is a surprising number. I shouldn't be blamed for not remembering 12. No, what's 12? I guess the 12 tribes. All right, so they were in a cave for 12 years. Elijah, the prophet, God's the Siri of God, comes and tells them, goes and tells them something that they need to know. Because Elijah, we know, is like the messenger bringing word from God, kind of translating back and forth between heaven and between earth. So Elijah prophet comes, stands at the entrance of the cave and says, "Who will tell Bar Yochai," right, Rashbi, "that the emperor died and the decree is abrogated?" So the answer is, I guess he's trying not to give away where they are, but he's like, who's going to go tell them? So they are able to come out of the cave. They come out of the cave. But the problem is, and here's something actually quite interesting and quite striking. This is something I think many grad students experience, maybe many yeshiva students experience, people who are so focused on their studies, so focused on their training, that their world blinkers, right? Blinkers, I don't know if you know, if you're familiar with horse racing, is the pieces of plastic, whatever, some kind of way to keep the horse only looking forward, right? Keep the focus of the horse on blinders. Blinkers, blinders, same thing. The blinders, thank you, Susie, are when you put a thing and make sure that the horse is only looking forward. Right? That's the only thing the horse is focusing on. So the perspective of Rashbi and Elazar, they're in the other world, right? They're just in Torah. Their entire life is just Torah, right? That's the entire lives. And they come out and they say, listen, why are all these people, farming? Right? Why are all these people weaving clothes? Why don't they just eat the miracle dates, drink the miracle water? Why don't they just wear the earth? Like a normal person would, right? Why are you so enmeshed, right, in the vanities of this temporary, meaningless existence, right? Hevel havalim, vanity of vanities, right? Why are they swapping this short-term benefit of this world and losing the long-term benefit of the world to come? So, and here comes superpowers. Says the Talmud that everywhere Rashbi or Rabbi Elazar would look, they would use their Jewish space lasers. They would actually shoot their eye beams at things, and everything would get incinerated. So here we have fire. Now, is the fire related to the bonfires? I don't know, but it's interesting here that what kind of fire is this? The fire is an anti-world fire. It's an anti-social fire, right? It's a fire that wants to burn the world down, purify it, right? Render it free from its dross, get it down to its purest essence. This is the fire that wants to burn the world down and to see what's left standing. It's a fire of transformation, right? Like Heraclitus, the famous pre-Socratic Greek philosopher, that the substance of the universe is fire because it's constantly in flux. So Rashbi wants to just change everything. Like, why are you doing all this nonsense? Why aren't you doing the essence? Rashbi can't integrate yet. Right? He's not able to reconnect with people. He can only reconnect with his soul. He can only be with other elites, right? His son, who's been learning with him. Now, interestingly, right, it's the Talmud has an ambivalent perspective on this, which the Talmud often does, right? The Talmud is actually constantly ambivalent. It's always wanting to see every side of things. It's never fully on board with anything. So Talmud's like, I don't know. It's not saying, oh, rabbi, of course, we should listen to the rabbis. It's like, I don't know, this rabbi went off the deep end a little bit. Can we really, is this a sustainable message of what Judaism, of what life should entail? So, a baskol, right, an echo of divine revelation makes itself known and says, did you leave the cave to destroy my world? Is that the purpose of Torah, to burn the world down? Right? They just want to see it burn? Is that what the Torah is supposed to be about? And then the Baskol says, go back to the cave. So the cave ends up being like this incubation chamber in which what's supposed to come out of it, at least the first stage of it, Rashbi wasn't ready to reintegrate. And has to go back to the cave with Rabbi Elazar. And they go back for another 12 months. Before it's 12 years. This time they only need 12 months. But they emerge once more, and later tradition says, on Lag BaOmer. And now they say, why? Because, and this is very interesting, the longest sentence people ever get for their wicked crimes in this world, in terms of the justice in the afterlife, is a year. There's no life sentence when it comes to hell in Jewish theologies of crime and punishment. And this is actually very interesting. This is why, it's an interesting halachic point. This is why that when you say Kaddish for your parents, even though you're in mourning for the whole year, that's the practice, you only say Kaddish for 11 months. Because you start with the presumption that they would never, of course, be sentenced to the maximum sentence. So you only say Kaddish for 11 months. I think I brought this up before, but it's very interesting. There's never ever there's no final or eternal damnation in Judaism. There is a theory of hell, and you can take that, your mileage may vary. You can take that literally or figuratively, however you want to. But interestingly, there's always little respites. There's never a complete damnation. There's a maximum sentence of 12, even for the wicked, or especially for the wicked. And also, every Shabbos, the damned are freed. And the reason, and they get to, even the damned have Shabbos. Shabbos is universal. Even those in hell, the fires are cooled on Shabbos. That's why you actually can't have water before making Kiddush or before making Havdalah, after Shabbos ends. Because that water is actually used to cool the fires of hell, says tradition. And you can't steal the water from the damned. Even the damned have rights. It's a very strong claim about the power of law and justice. It protects even those you wish it didn't. It has to. Okay, so the judgment of the wicked in Gehenna lasts for 12 months, so Rashbi and Rabbi Elazar can't be in the cave longer than 12 months. Now, they were in there for 12 years, but it wasn't hell the first time. It was heaven, right? It was heaven because they were learning Torah. They loved it. They were thrilled. Listen, their life was very pure. Listen, everyone knows how to learn Torah. First, you take off your clothes. Then you dig a hole in the ground. You put yourself in the ground, you become a turnip, and then you learn Torah all day. And then when you have to daven, you get out, right? And when you need to eat, don't worry, there's a little tree with the figs, it's fine, or the dates. And then when you need to drink, it's fine. Water magically appears. Right now, I, Baruch Hashem, had the zchus of visiting my parents, and it's been a little bit like this. I've had food provided for me. I've had water provided for me. I've had laundry done for me, and I'm immensely grateful to my parents. I really, really, really am, because it's been exhausting, and it's been really restorative. So Rashbi and Rabbi Elazar had like a 12-year sabbatical of just pure Torah. They didn't have to take care of anything in their lives. But when you don't have to take care of anything anymore, you lose perspective of what it means to live. It's no way to really live, right? You're a baby. You're a pet, right? You're not a full human being. Yes. But the second time they go to the cave, it's corrective. And that's really what Gehenna is, right? Hell in Judaism is not damnation, it's pedagogy. You're learning the hard way, right? What it felt to do the things that you did. So these are 12 months of going back to heaven, but this time it doesn't feel like heaven anymore. This time they're being sent to the corner. They're being sent to their corner, right? You have to sit in the corner. You're in timeout. But in that kind of detention period, they finally get out after 12 months, I think they've done some reflection now. They know what they did wrong. And they come out, and the Bas Kol now says, leave your cave. It's fine. They left. And everywhere that Rabbi Elazar would strike, so Rabbi Elazar stayed an extremist, right? He stayed hardcore. Rashbi would heal. Everywhere Rabbi Elazar would strike, Rashbi would heal. So Rashbi comes out of this experience. Rabbi Elazar, let's put him to the side in a sense. He's not the focus of Lag BaOmer. He's still young. He's still brash, right? He's still like a hard-charging idealist. Rashbi, older, more even-tempered, let's say, but starts the hard charger, right? Rashbi, student of Rabbi Akiba, right? A quasi-mystical rabbi. Not totally in this world. But Rashbi had to learn what it was to integrate back into the world. And what he's able to learn from that integrative process is how to heal. And we see balance emerge, a kind of yin-yang, right? Elazar would strike, Rashbi would heal. Okay, so I want to leave that simmering. I actually don't want to get too... I want to, first, before we move on, of course, open up to any questions, clarification. But I want to hold off on discussion because I'm going to use this as a bookend. We're actually going to come back to the story at the end. So I just want to leave it simmering. But just clarification questions or like curiosity or something like that, just take a quick breather before we move on. So anything to clarify or anything you want to say?
Can you just explain that last line a little more?
Sure. So Rabbi Elazar, it seems, doesn't fully learn his way out of being more, let's say, purist, right? He's still bringing the hammer down. He's still like not being able to understand the compromises people make in their lives in terms of what it means to balance heaven and earth, to balance Torah and livelihood, to balance God and other people. Whereas Rashbi, it seems, has a more integrative perspective and was able to patch things up, was able to intervene, was able to bring healing. We will see a more clear or more like clarifying example when we come back to the story at the end of the class. Is that satisfying? At least for now? Okay, great. Okay, so this is a famous story. You might have heard about a rabbi in a cave. So this is the germ. This is the seed of that story. It's found in the Talmud in Masech Shabbos 33b. So just in terms of your own Talmudic Bekias, now you know where to go. Okay, so here, but it's worth noting, Lag BaOmer is not explicitly mentioned. There's no explicit mention of Lag BaOmer in the Talmud. There's no clear recognition that the Talmudic rabbis, per se, had some kind of acknowledgement of the specialness of the day. It seems like it emerged over time. We see it show up in a number of medieval sources, but I want to just bring ourselves to the clarifying canonical text of the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch, 16th century, late 15th century law code, authored by Yosef Caro, Spanish/Palestinian mystic and lawyer, and then was added to. Yosef Caro was a Sephardic rabbi, and then there was an Ashkenazi gloss that was added to it. Shulchan Aruch means the set table, and the Ashkenazi gloss by Rabbi Moshe Isserlis from 16th century Poland was called the tablecloth. No one calls it that, but the technical name for the Ashkenazi gloss on the set table is the tablecloth, which I just think is a very cute thing. Okay. Oh, it's also, besides being Rashbi's yortzeit today, is also the Ramah's yortzeit. It's also Rabbi Moshe Isserlis' yortzeit, who wrote this gloss right here. So very important rabbi, all kinds of important people. Okay, so he says, regarding Lag BaOmer, he says, it is customary not to get married between Pesach and Shavuos until Lag BaOmer, because during that time, and we'll see this later, the students of Rabbi Akiva died. Very brief mention. But that's how he pins the meaning of Lag BaOmer. That Lag BaOmer was the cessation of the death of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Okay? So he ties those two things together. Now, interesting point. The second law of this chapter, 493, is about haircuts. You're not supposed to get a haircut during the Omer. That's one of the hooks of the legal restrictions in the Omer. But what is we'll get to why they're done. We're going to come back to the story about why they're died later. I'm leaving that as a tantalizing detail. But what's the main restriction? That the Omer is a time of quasi-mourning practices. What's the focus of what you're supposed to be refraining from according to the Shulchan Aruch? L'chaim. So you're supposed to be refraining from getting married. So hold off one more day. Also worth noting, quick halachic point for those to whom this is relevant. While Lag BaOmer starts tonight, the things that you can start doing start tomorrow. So of the two big laws that you're supposed to follow, not getting married and not getting a haircut, you actually have to wait till tomorrow morning. So don't get married tonight and don't shave or cut your hair. Just wait. One more night. It's a quick halachic aside. Okay, so you're not supposed to get married. Now that's interesting. Why? Why do you think? Just let your mind roam, graze, eating the turnips of Torah. Yeah, Ben.
Are you in mourning for Rabbi Akiba?
Sorry?
Are you in mourning for Rabbi Akiba?
Okay, so this could be a mourning period for Rabbi Akiva's students. Great. Lauren says no joy. Right, but why no joy? So no joy because of the students. But why married? Right? I mean, so it is somewhat similar to the practices of the 3 weeks, right? So we have another mourning period later in the summer between Shivasar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, and the 9th of Tisha B'Av, in which we mourn the loss of the temple in Jerusalem. And during that time, also not supposed to get married. Also not supposed to enter a business relationship, right? It's a time of bad luck, bad vibes. Bad vibes is the 3 weeks. You want to stay away from things that are precarious during the 3 weeks. So here we have a somewhat similar thing, right? You're not supposed to get married, but this became very provocative to me, and I'll show you why. He walks it back a little bit. He says, but you can get betrothed, and you can even do the first half of getting married, which is called kiddushin. So there's two parts of getting married. First is called kiddushin. That's betrothal. You give the ring. And then the second part of getting married is called nisuin, which is marriage. Marriage is actually not effectuated by the ring. Marriage is effectuated by the ketubah, the contract, and being under the chuppah, or going into an isolated space together. It's called yichud. So you are allowed to almost get married, says the Mechaber, says Yosef Karo. But for nisuin, for the climax, the marriage, if someone did so, we don't punish them. So the Mechaber, and this is generally true in terms of Sephardic practice, is a little bit more lenient. It's a little bit more understanding. It doesn't like barrel all the way in when it comes to Omer practice. The Ramah, Moshe Israelis, also your site tonight, says, but from Lag BaOmer onwards, everything is allowed. So it's worth noting there are two Omer practices, and a lot of the commentaries go into this. One of them starts after Pesach, and it ends at Lag BaOmer. Another one starts at the beginning of ER, and it ends 3 days before Shavuos. But everyone agrees, Lag BaOmer is a break. It's a break. It's a release. It's relief. It's a break from having to restrict yourself as much. Now, what's interesting is that while the two laws that are focused on in the Shulchan Aruch, not getting married and not getting a haircut, that doesn't seem that hard to practice. But Omer, as with many Jewish traditions, kind of like grows, kind of snowballs as it rolls down the hill. And it starts accreting things that are associated with it, because it's not really about marriage. It's kind of about marriage, but it's really about something bigger. So I want to look at the Magen Avraham, which is an early modern commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. And he says, I retranslate that as, it's fine, right? If you end up getting married, says the Mechaber, it's fine. Like, whatever, right? So the Magen Avraham says, he says, why is it fine? Because someone could come and steal your girl. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I just wanted to say someone come and steal your girl. But the point is someone might come and, like, presumpte you, right? Someone might come and, like, get your sweetie. Who knows, right? But it seems to me, says Magen Avraham, that while one is allowed to host an engagement feast, we still have the custom that it is forbidden to dance and to party down. And it seems to me that even one who has made a shidduch is not allowed to dance or to groove. So he ends up pointing at the being forbidden from getting married, prohibition on marriage, and says even though the Mechaber says it's really about marriage, not these ancillary aspects, he pushes back and says, well, fine, but it's not really about the ceremony, it's about what it's doing. And what is it doing? Like, what's the marriage ceremony really about? It may lead to dancing. That's very funny. It may lead to dancing, right? It may, but really the ikr though. Okay, Maxine, wait. Wait. 2 minutes. We will get there, and then I'll bring in your comment. It's about the dancing. What is the dancing? Right? The dancing is a physical, and Maxine, please jump in, a physical manifestation of people, of bodies coming together. So marriage is a metaphysical, a legal entwining of two persons, right? Coming as if one unit. It's unity. You're not allowed. You can almost have it, says the Mechaber, and we'll let you get away with it because it might ruin something for you, and that's not good. We don't want to, punish you, right? You don't want to lose a chance at happiness, at union, but it's just not the right moment. And dancing is the physical manifestation of bodies coming together, of people in synchrony, in harmony. So the Omer is a time in which, and when I say the Omer, what I mean is when we're practicing the Omer, right? Like before Lag BaOmer or while we have these restrictions. The Omer is a time in which there's some kind of resistance, some type of buffering, repellent force that keeps us from coming together. Now, I found this a really meaningful is such an empty word. I found this really touching, provoking, challenging, tender when I was learning it because of all the ways that we're being kept from each other right now. We've been in a year-long Omer, and Lag BaOmer is when things start to lighten, things start to loosen, things start to get relaxed and released. And that easing of repulsion, that easing of propulsion, right, of keeping us pushed from each other, when we can start finding each other's groove again, getting in each other's groove, start dancing together, start learning together, start uniting again. That's Lag BaOmer. And while maybe it's not fully manifest yet in this moment, it's coming. And you feel the energy pulling us towards that reunion. Okay, so before we get to Rabbi Akiba, no Rabbi Akiba stuff yet. I promise it's coming to the next source. Look, Rabbi Akiba, I would never lie to you. So just on the Shulchan Aruch, on the practice of refraining from getting married, but really it seems, according to Magen Avraham, refraining from coming together. And that's what we see happening practically in terms of the Omer. It's when you don't go to concerts. It's even when people don't listen to recorded instrumental music, right? It's anything really that gets us in that kind of tuning into the same wavelength. Now, people have different practices. It's a minhag. It really is. It's a custom. So it's not as black letter as the law. And people take it as far as they take it. Some people are more strict with the Omer. Some people really find the ways in which the Omer works for them. And it's worth noting, especially last year, but a bunch of rabbis made a ruling that the people should feel comfortable to observe the Omer more leniently because of the strenuous emotional toll the COVID is taking on us. So that's also worth noting. It's a Torah of life. It's not one that seeks to drive us away from life. Yeah, no, Susie's comparing it to the mourning practice of Shloshim, right? The 30 days after losing someone that you love, a close family member. And yeah, that's quite right. Yeah, it's drawing on mourning practice. I say the 3 weeks is literally like Shloshim, literally like sitting Shiva. The 9 days are just like sitting Shiva. 30 days, Shloshim is just like 3 weeks. Here, it's drawing from those things for sure. But you're quite right to see that harmony. Very nice. Okay. So, here comes Rabbi Akiva, and Maxine, I really want you to bring your chiddush back after we look at the source. But I'm as always, you intuited something quite quite great. So Rabbi Akiva says, what is he saying? So here we have actually a whole, this is in the middle of a big Agadita, a big narrative, fabulous ethical passage about the importance of learning Torah and about how precarious Torah is and how valuable it is, how precious it is, but also how tender it is in that way. That you need to start it early to keep it going later, and also how it's something that needs to be stewarded and cared for because it's had so many bumps in the road. It's had so many ups and downs. So here's one of the famous ups and downs. So Rabbi Akiva says that this verse should be understood as followed, as everything starts with the Midrash. He says, if one studied Torah in one's youth, one should study more Torah in one's old age. Okay, great. So you start the process, right? You get the oil flowing down the hill. You get the wheels a turning. And if one had students in one's youth, one should have additional students in one's old age. So it's a cautionary lesson too, right? In terms of, you don't just like flame out when you're young. The point is actually to build and to grow. It's not like math academia in which you get the Fields Medal at 40 tops and you burn out and you never produce any new chidushim in math after you're 40. It's very rare that happens. It's more like humanities academia, in which the older you get, the more sage and more wise you are, and you have this burgeoning community of your disciples. It's as it is stated, in the morning you sow your seed, and in the evening you harvest. Right? So you sow your seeds in the morning, you give yourself the conditions you need to build and to grow as you age, as you progress in your life. Okay. So they said, by way of example, that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. Remember, have students in your young age versus your old age. 12,000 pairs of students in the land that stretched from Givat to Antipatris. Right? We see the Roman names we see in Syria, Palestine. Right? From Givat to Antipatris in Judea. And they all died in one period of time because they did not treat each other with respect. End of Agadita. That's all we get in terms of this famous story of 12,000 pairs of rabbis studying together Rabbi Akiva. Now, part of it is that, like, after they passed, Rabbi Akiva built back better. He built a strong yeshiva after that. But this becomes a hook for Lag BaOmer too, as we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. That Lag BaOmer, according to the Masorah, according to tradition, is the day when the students stopped dying. Now, why? Why is this going on? Well, we're going to look at it. But the fact that the students are denoted as 12,000 pairs, which is an odd locution, does not escape notice of the Ben Yehoyada. Ben Yehoyada is a later commentary, but very attentive. Ben Yehoyada says, it's 12,000 pairs. One can ask, why did the Gemara specify 12,000 pairs of students? Why not just say 24,000 students? I can do math. I'm younger than for now. I can do math, right? 24,000. That would have been a much simpler way of saying it. Why 12,000 pairs? Nothing's ever meaningless. Nothing's ever accidental. So it seems to me, God help me realize this, that the specification comes to teach you that the great wisdom of Rabbi Akiva... right, so I mean, here in 12,000 pairs, you might just say, fine, they're chavrusas, right? But where do we get the notion of chavrusa from? That's not clear, right? There's the notion of having a bar plukta, the rabbi you always disagree with. There's the notion of having chavrusa o mesusa, right? Fellowship or death. But it's not clear that necessarily the yeshiva is organized in dyads. But here it seems, this is a good proof that Jewish learning, Torah, is a social activity. Actually, keep your eyes peeled, because eventually we will have a whole class on the theology of chavrusa, on what partner learning is and why it's so significant in Judaism. That Rabbi Akiva, in understanding with his Holy Spirit that the students were struck through with jealousy, so what was he going to do to respond to that? He said he devised to pair them off 2 by 2, coupling a lesser student with a greater one, which would lead to the former being dignified by the latter, right? The lesser student, by association with the greater student, would actually would have exposure to someone better than they are, and would be able to kind of take them off the pedestal. But B, also, there would be less of a sense of competition because it would even things out. 100 student would be paired with 1 student, 99 student paired with 2 student, etc. Right? So we see that Rabbi Akiba was trying to level things out. But, interestingly, it didn't work. It didn't work. So how did Rabbi Akiba, that's how I interpret it, because the passage is kind of obscure. How did Rabbi Akiba pivot when the kind of decision, the answer he came to, didn't quite fit? Something very interesting. It says, so the Gemara specified 12,000 pairs. It's not just that Rabbi Akiva put the greatest student with the least good student. Rabbi Akiva put every student together with a chavrusa. That's pedagogy. And how did Rabbi Akiva find the appropriate fit match, their true study buddy? Each pair designed for their reciprocal and mutual benefit and repair. Now, repair should sound familiar, because who else was repairing at the end of a process? Rashbi. So we see already, I was blown away when I found this. So there is a thread that connects the 2 main historical sources, or like narrative sources of what happens on the day of Lag BaOmer. Rashbi in the cave and Rabbi Akiva and the students. Now, worth noting, right, Rashbi is a student of Rabbi Akiva's, but Rashbi in the cave and Rabbi Akiva and the students. What's connected to both of them is that they are both moments of needing to learn how to integrate, how to fit back in with people, how to reconnect people. Why are they dying, the students? Because they are jealous of each other, right? They're competing against each other. They're seeing each other as posed against each other, competitive, right? It's very much of like a more of an academic situation that we see nowadays. Students jockeying over each other to try to do the best in the rankings and things like that. But that's not that model is death, according to the Talmud. That leads to death. Because the most fit and healthy Torah learning and relationship is one of collaboration, one of mutual support, and one even of healing. And that's what Rashbi had to learn when he left the cave, that he had to learn how to heal, not just how to challenge. And that's what Rabbi Akiva is trying to teach his students as well, and it's what saves the rest of them from doom. So the Talmud seems to imply that this is a plague. A plague swept through the yeshiva, 12,000 pairs of students perished, and it's a tragedy. That's why we mourn during the Omer, says the Rishonim, says the medieval rabbis. Now again, you can take the stories of the Talmud as fabulous, right, as fables. You can take them as metaphors. You can take them as symbolic. Or you can take them as a report of something that happened in the ancient world. For me, the purpose of this is that it's trying to teach us something. And that's in that we have the truth of Torah. That what we have is a description of a toxic learning environment. A learning environment that's framed and infused with competition, with dissension and jealousy. And instead, through the story of Rashbi, learning how to heal, learning how to reintegrate, and the story of Rabbi Akiva and his students, learning how to fit them together as the only way to stop the plague. Coming together is the way to stop the plague. Now, that's a tough nut to swallow right now when we have to stay apart as a way of stopping our plague. So these things don't translate literally. But in a way, the plague ends when we come back together. Right? Finding ways to reunite, finding ways to stay attentive to each other, finding ways to stay connected even if we're physically separate. That's been the spiritual challenge of this whole past year. Finding ways to stay in each other's minds and stay in each other's consciousnesses even if we haven't been able to stay in each other's spaces. And it's been a challenge. It's been a deep challenge. But here we have, in its way, it's an equation that Lag BaOmer is the day of integration. It's the day of finding unity, but not a unity of sameness, a unity of different parties finding a way to come back together, finding a way not just to be proximate to each other, but to be attentive to each other and to be for each other's reciprocal and mutual benefit. Because Rabbi Akiva is forming these relationships so that both parties are benefiting. They each have something to learn from each other. Not just the bigger benefits the smaller. It's that everyone equally, right, unifyingly have what to gain from each other and what to be grateful for vis-a-vis each other. Yeah, Susie, that's a great point. We have to, come together. We need to be coordinated. We need to be attentive to each other to make sure that we're protecting each other, making sure that we don't let those to slip by, those who are on the margins, or those in power don't want us to pay attention to. We need to make sure to stay attentive for sure. For sure. Okay, I want to bring back actually the chat window. So Maxine quite rightly points out this point about the students, right? They're referred to as pairs. And I think, like, in terms of this anxiety, right? Bad luck is the language, is the lashon that she uses, but this anxiety about people being brought together. I think that's a really key point, right? That it's only through the combustion of elements coming together. It's only through the molecules that can be made of the elements of individuals that we have the promise of something that's not just what we are in silos, but what is created through synthesis. It's a cliche to say it's greater, they create something greater than just their disparate parts. It's a cliched sentiment, fine. But I believe it to be true. And I think that there's so many ways in which we're being encouraged to see ourselves as these isolated atomistic individuals rather than seeing what can be generated when we come together with each other. Combustion, the fire, the dynamism of Lag BaOmer is what thank you, Ben, is what happens when these two, these atom smasher, right? What happens when we get flung together, when we can create together. So this isn't like a pro-marriage class in the sense of not like haranguing people to get married because that's the meaning of your existence or whatever. I'm single, that's fine. But the point really is marriage as a metaphor is deeply important. And I think, marriage hopefully as it's practiced in its radical sense of solidarity, very important in terms of two people deeply committed to each other as a model of what it means for everybody. Right? Marriage as the model of what it means for two people to be radically united, to be really on each other's team. And not just that, but in terms of marriage as a venue, a space in which new things are made. Children, a home, a space in which you welcome others into it, right? You create more together than you ever could apart. And that's a symbolic truth, right? That's not just for people with a ksuba. Marriage as what it's teaching all of us in terms of it is always the case that 1 + 1 = 3. That there's something made new when people come together, because before it was just two individuals, A and B. But when A and B come together, now there's a new thing that's come into the world, AB, right? This new thing that had never been together, this integration, this incorporation. Okay. It's true. So Lauren says divorce is expensive, and that's true. And it's the way in which there are many rational reasons to be anxious about the risks, right? Of what it means to, again, I'm taking marriage as a metaphor here, not like get married, but what it means to be vulnerable, to open yourself up, to let someone in, right? To be exposed in that kind of way. And there's, people recover and heal, repair in all kinds of ways. But the repairing hopefully builds up our resilience to be able to reform bonds with people that hopefully will be paired with us. It's interestingly, it says here, he's chakim, right? Rabbi Akiva devised, he was cunning, he was clever. But he's chakim isn't, in my opinion, a positive word. It's usually, it's like cunningness. But really, Rabbi Akiva needed to focus on ho'il, on the to'eles, on what is productive, on what produces, on two people that are good for each other. And that takes time to learn. Not everyone's a good chavrusa for everybody. Not everyone's a good business partner for everybody. Not everybody's a good friend for everybody. But everyone has a good friend out there. right? Not everybody's good for everybody. But the key to learning how to integrate and as we learn and we get older, we learn, what kinds of people am I working with? What kinds of people light me up? What kinds of people do I light up? Right? And we find the appropriate ways to relate to everybody. We relate to everyone with sever panim yafos, with a kind face, with a civil demeanor, and with benevolence. We relate to everyone with benevolence and civility. And then as we find people that we become closer to, more intimate with, more vulnerable with, right, we find the right people, the judiciously selected people that will help us then generate and create new worlds and new possibilities, new heavens and new earths. I think Lag BaOmer in a way is a fantasia or a rhapsody of human connection. That's the claim I want to make. And I think we have these dialectical examples of Rashbi having to go away from all other people to come back and not know how to do it, and then have to recenter himself to learn how to reintegrate into society. And we see Rabbi Akiba learning the hard way how important it is to make connections between people, and that Lag BaOmer is the day where we celebrate the promise, the life-giving promise of what it is to reconnect with each other. Okay. Comments, thoughts, questions, objections? The chat's been active. I've been loving it. Okay. So, here we have a text. This is a little bonus Sfirot HaOmer class. This week is the week of Hod. And Lag BaOmer is Hod Shebehod. It's the hodiest day of all. It's Hod inside of Hod, Hod within Hod, dignity and dignity, glory and glory, honor and honor. It's the most intensified version of Hod. Why? Why is Lag BaOmer on the day of most Hod? So let's look into it. So this is from the Yismach Yisrael, from the Alexander Rabbi of Yerachim Yisrael Danziger, late 19th century, if I remember correctly, Hasidic rabbi. He says, V'noida, Mashakasu Ari Hakadosh B'Siduro. It's known what the Ari Zal said in his Siddur. He says that the character, the nature of Hod is parallel to Bore Nefashos, healer of souls. And that is, as we know, all of the spheros are associated with different nicknames of God. And that's a nickname of God. It means healer of souls. So this is the healing aspect of God. Hod is associated with healing. And that this day, Lag BaOmer, which is Hod Shebehod, is the Bore Nefashos inside of Bore Nefashos. Right? Inside of healing and healing. The Bore Refuos, sorry, the creator of healing. Bore Nefashos is another term used for God, healer of souls. This is Bore Nefashos, the creator of healing. So Hod is healing, and Hod Shebehod is the healing of healing. Or who watches the Watchmen, right? It's the healing within healing. It's a very abstract idea, but he's going to give an illuminating example. He says, the meaning of this idea accords with what the investigators, the mechakrim, those who investigate the universe, the Kabbalists, the detectives, have written, that one who knows they do not know is far better off than one who does not know they do not know. Right? One who knows you don't know is in a better position than one who is ignorant of the fact that you are ignorant. If you are aware of your ignorance, that is wisdom. For one who knows they are ailing, chas v'shalom, God forbid, vigorously pursues a cure, a treatment, and a healer for what ails them. Right? If you feel off, you know something's wrong. You know something's missing. And you go to try to find somebody to help in a treatment, a methodology, an approach to help you heal. But this too needs healing. What needs healing? This is the creator of healing within the creator of healing. The Bore Nefashos, Bore Refuos inside of Bore Refuos. He says that God creates healing so that one knows one needs healing. It's the consciousness to know that you need help. If you're inside of the consciousness of of sickness, you need help, right? You're inside of that need. But then to see the edges of what you're experiencing, to be able to recognize it for what it is, to be able then to have a plan, to be able then to address these things. That's Hod Shebehod, the healing of healing. Maybe you could even read it, push it the other way. I don't think this is what he's saying, but he says even that needs healing. I was wondering, like the ways in which we make ourselves sick through worry, or sick through anxiety, or the way in which our society encourages or incentivizes our anxieties, our stresses about our health, or leaves us dangling by a thread, right? Like so many people having to strenuously pursue their wellness, right? Such a huge stressor for so many people. People are chronically ill, people are disabled, people whose well-being is central to what is their daily practice, and how much stress that is. Right? Imagine how stressful it is just to like go and like get Sudafed when you're sick, but to have something in which you need help more consistently, that your work that's part of it. Something that people who aren't faced with their bodily limitations need to be conscious of. So there's a healing of healing. There's a healing that we need for healing. There's recovery we need to recover. Recovery from the trauma of healing. Lag BaOmer is a repair of our porous and vulnerable tender membranes. That which keeps us inside of ourselves, but also is the medium of connection with others. To touch, to hold, to dance together. Right? The skin, which is harmed, cut, needs healing too, so that we can reconnect. So in this Kabbalistic, Hasidic conception of Lag BaOmer, it's a day of spiritual, emotional, holistic healing. And how surprised was I when the continuation of the Rashbi story after the cave was his cracked skin, his broken skin. I mean, he's been buried himself in a cave for 12 years. He doesn't have a very good skin regimen. But Pinchas ben Yair, the student of Rashbi's, he goes and greets Rashbi, and he brings him to the bathhouse and starts bathing him. And he saw that Rashbi had cracks in the skin on his body. And he was crying, and the tears stung because they're astringent, they're salty. And Rabbi Pinchas says, "Oy li, woe to me that I see you like this." And Rabbi Shimon says, "No, happy are you, because hadn't you seen me like this, you wouldn't have found me in this state." Now, the Steinsaltz interpretation is in prominence of Torah. But that's added in. That's not in the text. I think part of what's going on is that happy are you that you've seen me like this. Happy is a strong word, but because we've had the opportunity to connect in this way, and to connect in a moment of healing, to connect in this caring, tender way. I think Rashbi, when he first left the cave, wouldn't have been able to say that. It's only Lag BaOmer Rashbi who can say that. It's the Rashbi who understands how precious human connection is, how that healing, reparative connection is key to what it means for people to be together. That we give each other strength, that we bring each other healing. He says when Rashbi would raise a difficulty, here's the chavrusa relationship. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would respond. This is a chavrusa, a deep partnership between two people that brings healing to each other. And what's the final 24 answers? It's the number 24,000 students, 12,000 pairs, 24 answers. It's a very interesting coincidence. I'm not going to make too much hay of that, but still. But finally, Rashbi's conclusion he comes to after this productive, healing, reparative relationship with his study partner, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, he says, since I have had a miracle, I must go and repair. That's the response to a miracle. That's the response to Lag BaOmer's miracle, is bringing more healing into the world. Since I've had a miracle, I must go bring repair. So I find Lag BaOmer in this way. No, good diction. I find Lag BaOmer in this way to be a holiday of reconnection. And it starts with the opposite of that, right? But Lag BaOmer is a day of cessation, a day of relief, and day of release. Rashbi and Rabbi Elazar in the cave purely studying Torah, but in their silos. It doesn't say they learn together. There's no evidence that they're chavrusa. It's only when they leave the cave, they can't handle what it is to be with other people. They have to bury themselves in the ground. They're just pure heads. They're pure brains. And it's only when Rashbi goes back and re-incubates for another 12 months, and he comes out whole, and he comes out recognizing what it is that needs repair. Rabbi Elazar strikes, but he repairs. So Lag BaOmer as a day in which Rashbi recognizes how essential reintegration is. And Lag BaOmer as the day when the dissension, the jealousy, the hatred between the students, the competitiveness, the antisocial attitude between students is lessened. Rabbi Akiva finds ways to bring people together as a way to stop this spiritual death, this plague. Lag BaOmer, and not just how to bring people together, how to bring people together in a way in which they benefit each other, they heal each other. Lag BaOmer is about finding ways to reconnect with each other, to bring tenderness and healing to each other. The happiness of that, happy, again, strong word, but the joy of what human connection can entail, the healing that it can bring. It's not an accident that Lag BaOmer is such a social night, such a social experience, coming together around the fire. Even though Rashbi is this hyper-mystic type rabbi, ascending to heaven, elevating out of this sublunar plane. But Rashbi doesn't end alone. Rashbi's Torah is based in the pasuk, Hine matovu manayim shevas achim gam yachad. We learned that text actually in the Zohar class, if you remember. That the Zohar is only possible through people coming together and sitting together in loving, sibling-like relationship. It's not a mysticism, it's not a spirituality of the individual. It is a deeply social mysticism. It is what is generated when the disparate parts of us come together. That's the sfirot, disparate parts coming together in something generated more than just them on their own. That's the students. That's what Rashbi is trying to teach us on this, his day of Hilula, when we celebrate his life on the day of his death. So it's not an accident that, per Mom's first picture, the rainbow picture, that a rainbow is associated with Rashbi and associated with Lag BaOmer. And I think it's not an accident. That's actually where we have, thank you, it's where we have this practice of shooting bows and arrows. So it starts with the rabbis stealing away to the caves and then pretending to be practicing for the Olympics. But there's a spiritual reading of it from the Bnei Yisachar, another 19th century Hasidic rabbi, who says it's not just bows and arrows, but it's the same exact word in Hebrew between bow and arrow and rainbow. That it's really referring to the rainbow, which is the sign of a miracle. And when I have a miracle, I go and bring healing, says Rashbi. It's a sign of a miracle. It's a sign of God's covenant and protection, a sign of God's promise. And not just that, but what's a rainbow made out of? A rainbow is made out of different colors coming together. Different colors coming together. Not smushing all into one color, not turning back into white light, but difference, variety, different elements, people coming together to make something more beautiful in their conjunction than they ever would have been on their own. What's astounding about the rainbow is that it is a prime example of how things together are more than ever they could be as disparate elements. And the rainbow is the light of God's promise from the first day of creation, says the B'nai Yisachar. The promise of the light stored for us at the end of days. It's the rainbow that's associated with Mashiach. And Mashiach is brought when we sit together, when we come together for each other's benefit, with reciprocity, with mutuality, with mutual respect, looking for each other's well-being, and bringing healing to this world. Ken Yiratzon, Lag Sameach. So there, we can stop the official Torah learning. I really want to just close, at least, but I mean, not close. Please, if you have comments or things that are brewing in your brains, in your hearts. But something that was just especially just touching to me is, I think, not looking at Lag BaOmer as some kind of magical solution. Lag BaOmer is not going to end the plague, as it were. It's not ending our plague right now. But I think I see Jewish holidays not as descriptive, but as prescriptive. Lag BaOmer generates the energy of togetherness. Lag BaOmer generates the possibility of ways to reconnect. It makes us recommit to what it means to look out for each other, to learn with each other, to learn from each other. It makes us recommit to never forget how much we gain from each other, how much we need each other. Lag BaOmer is a recommission or recommittal of us to each other, of the promise and the amazing potential that what coming together means, whether it's in this kind of virtual venue or if it's a more conventional situation. That Lag BaOmer is about stirring that energy up. Hisoru. Right? Awaken, arouse, arise. We can awaken that energy, and the key to it is to be as attentive to each other's well-being as possible, as Lag BaOmer makes us so aware. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Please join us, but please don't leave because we'll have a little time for discussion too after close the class, the video rather. But we'll have Kabbalat Shabbat tomorrow evening at 7:20 p.m. and we'll have Havdalah, Motzei Shabbos at 9:20 p.m. Same Zoom link, and we'll have the 6th week of Sfirot HaOmer, or Sfirot HaOmer for the 6th week of the Omer, for the Sphere of Yesod, also associated with the rainbow, so maybe also not an accident there, associated with Yosef Atzadik, foundation, rootedness. So I hope to see you at all of that. I wish everybody a Lag Sameach. May we find the ways to bring goodness to each of us and to find ways to reconnect.